Dining al fresco usually means eating outside, but back in the day in the Roman city of Pompeii, it's likely folks gathered to dine in front of frescoes like this one. Just last week, archaeologists among the city's ancient ruins said they uncovered this incredibly well-preserved artwork buried for centuries by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79. All signs indicate that the eruption was very sudden and incredibly violent. The population and the buildings people lived in were destroyed, and Pompeii was buried under a pile of ash that uniquely preserved the ruins so that archaeologists continue to uncover the ancient city's secrets nearly 2 millennia later. The latest paintings to emerge are believed to show Greek mythological figures like Helen of Troy, and researchers think they would have served as conversation pieces as people dined by lamplight, oblivious to the building pressure in the mountain nearby. Hi, I'm Carl Azuz. Thank you for watching The World from A to Z. For weeks, international government officials and experts had been warning that the Middle Eastern nation of Iran was planning an attack on the Middle Eastern nation of Israel. Iran is a sworn enemy of Israel. Militant groups supported by Iran have been launching sporadic attacks against Israel for months, and that country has responded with attacks on militias and sites used by Iran. Early this month, there was a missile strike on an Iranian embassy in Syria that killed 7 Iranian military members. Their country blamed Israel for that and promised revenge. And this weekend, for the first time, the Islamic Republic directly attacked Israel, launching more than 300 missiles and drones at the Jewish state. Israel says more than 99% of these projectiles were intercepted, shot down before they could reach their targets, and the BBC reports that several countries, including the US, helped Israel shoot down the weapons. There was only a small amount of damage from the attack, and the only casualty reported was a young Arab girl in Israel who was seriously wounded. So what now? That's the big question officials are asking. Iran indicated it considered the matter finished for the time being, warning Israel against, quote, another mistake, and saying the U.S., quote, must stay away. Israel's government says the event is not over and that it would, quote, exact the price when the time is right. And leaders from several other countries, some of whom had told Iran not to attack Israel, criticized the drone assault and warned that actions like it could lead to a larger conflict in the Middle East.
World knowledge. What part of the U.S. Constitution gives Congress the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes? Article 1, Section 5, 4th Amendment, 16th Amendment, no part of the Constitution. Congress was given the power to collect income taxes in 1913 when the 16th Amendment was ratified.
Well, if you hear folks grumbling about the Internal Revenue Service today, it's because it's tax day in America. Federal income taxes actually predate the 16th Amendment. President Abraham Lincoln first enacted them in 1861 to raise money for the U.S. Civil War. That was temporary, though. What we pay now shows no signs of going away, and while the original deadline was on March 1st, it was later moved to March 15th, the Ides of March, coincidentally, and later to April 15th. Time magazine says that was to give Americans more time to recover from Christmas expenses and prepare for tax season. And the deadline's been on this date since the mid-1950s. So what does it mean? Simply that most of those Americans who earn money have to file their taxes with the federal government by today or to request more time to get that done. Americans who owe taxes are expected to pay them right away. Those getting a refund can usually expect it within a few weeks.
An uptick in gas prices helped fuel overall inflation last month, but that wasn't the only auto-related driver. According to the March report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, auto insurance costs have spiked 22% over the last 12 months. Auto maintenance and repair costs are up 8.2%. Greg Brannon, director of automotive research for AAA, says insurers simply have more costs to cover.
One thing that we can't ignore when it comes to the cost of insuring a vehicle is that cars are more expensive today than than they were years ago.
And while prices for new and used vehicles have fallen off of pandemic-era peaks, newer features that make a car safer, Brandon says, like advanced driver assistance systems, make repairs more specialized.
They also make it a little bit more expensive to repair. And it's not just that. Labor rates are up at body shops and repair shops around the cost of parts. And it's also often that you're having to wait for those parts to arrive.
Brandon says drivers looking for some relief can effort lower mileage by carpooling, for example, but don't cut corners on maintenance.
When things are tight, it's actually more important to do that maintenance then, because you're less likely to be surprised by a big repair bill, and the vehicle is also more likely to perform well and get the fuel economy that you're looking for.
On this date in world history. On April 15, 1865, U.S. President Abraham Lincoln died the day after he was shot while watching a play in Washington, D.C. Lincoln was the first U.S. president to be assassinated. John Wilkes Booth, an actor and Confederate supporter who shot Lincoln, was tracked down and killed less than 2 weeks later. In the early hours of this date in 1912, the British passenger ship RMS Titanic sank in the North Atlantic Ocean after hitting an iceberg during its maiden voyage. There were more than 2,200 people aboard, traveling from England to New York, but only around 710 survived the sinking. And on this date in 1947, Jackie Robinson broke baseball's color barrier. The 28-year-old became the first African American to appear in a major league game, starting at first base for the Brooklyn Dodgers. In the years that followed, he'd go on to become a major league MVP and help the Dodgers win a World Series. Every MLB team has had Robinson's number, 42, retired in his honor. Vikings, Scorpions, and Panthers. Oh my! Today's World of Viewer starts in the Pacific Northwest, where we welcome Mr. Gehring's class. The Vikings are online at Garfield Palouse High School in Palouse, Washington. Second stop is in Las Cruces, New Mexico, where you gotta watch out for the Scorpions of Picacho Middle School. Great to see Mrs. Rodriguez's class watching there. And then it's on to Norris Springs, Iowa to recognize the Panthers of Mrs. Anderson's class. Hello to everyone at Central Springs Middle School.
Beekeepers often say hi with a little bit of smoke when opening up a beehive. This triggers the bee's instinct to go in search of honey and ignore the keepers.
We'll see the queen. Perfect. This is a nice brood frame. We just had to go and manually open every individual hive, look for a queen, look for the brood, see that everything is okay.
Now, there's an app for that. Beekeeping is getting a smart touch. Israeli tech startup Bee Hero has developed a sensor for beekeepers to track the health of their bee colonies in real time and catch any problems early to prevent die-offs, which are often the result of a combination of issues like parasites, pesticides, starvation, and changing environments.
The beekeeper can come and do something very quickly. Otherwise, they can come 3, 4, 5 weeks too late.
The sensors placed inside the hive measure temperature, humidity, and sound. Those metrics are then transmitted to the cloud, and beekeepers are able to access the information from their phone or computer.
Basically, he translates the communication between the bees to language that the beekeepers can understand. If you like, this is exactly what Google Translate do between two languages. So we translate bee language to human language, and then we provide the insights for the beekeeper to take an action in the right time, in the right place.
Why all the buzz about bees? Well, they are incredibly important to our ecosystem. Bees are the #1 pollinators on Earth, and that means they're incredibly important to food security around the world because of crop pollination. According to bee experts at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, 1/3 of the world's food production depends on bees.
About 3.5 weeks ago, a critically endangered species got an important +2 at a zoo in France. These two. Yeah, they're cute now, but they'll grow to at least a couple 100 pounds each. Officials estimate there are only about 400 Sumatran tigers left in the wild, but there are dozens of zoos that have them in captivity. So officials here are making sure the little ones are getting microchipped and putting on a healthy weight. even if we could bring one home, and we can't. They have a carnivoracious appetite, a propensity toward hissy fits, a roarable tendency to destroy your couch, and can scrape up trouble when they make a feline beeline to the litter box. That said, if one could be domesticated, summa-trained, and have those tiger eyes legalized, we're sure Cat Fancy would say they're great. This is Carl Azuz, frosted flaking out on another edition of The World from A to Z, and you mean the world to me.